Welcome back to Mondays at the Museum. Today is our second session together. Last week, we learned about the history of museums. What a museum is. Museums are places or spaces that tell stories about people, places, and things using objects and/or images. Got to see our first glimpse at what the Met looks like on the inside and some of the pieces that are on display from their vast collection on the Met Kids website. Today, we're going to be reading visual art. What? We're going to learn how to read or look closely at a painting and take our second virtual visit to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But first, let's listen to the book, The Museum. As you listen, think about how seeing or experiencing new, interesting, and beautiful things makes you feel.
I've been waiting to unbox this for a long time.
The museum. When I see a work of art, something happens in my heart. I cannot stifle my reaction. My body just goes into action. This one makes me want to pose and stand up on my tippy toes. Now I'm all twirly whirly, twinkly sparkly super swirly. Phew, exhausted. I take a breath. I can't wait to see what's next. I think I'll analyze the who's and what's and where's and why's. I'm starting to feel so sad and blue, heavy, lonely, through and through. I think I need something to eat. Those apples would be such a treat. I'm skipping through a field of flowers. I could keep this up for hours. Fragrant, soft, and so delightful. Suddenly, it's all so frightful. I make silly faces at a guy. He did it first. I do not lie. I'm giddy from all these lines and squiggles. I collapse in fits of giggles. Wait, what is this I see? An empty canvas stares at me. Where is the color? What does it mean? It's the strangest art I've ever seen. Is this a joke? I shut my eyes, and something happens to my surprise. I start to see things in my head, yellow, blue, then green and red. Circles, lines, all kinds of shapes, faces, flowers, and landscapes. I open my eyes and look once more at the canvas that I saw before. It's mine to fill the way I choose. A purple dot, a pair of shoes, zigzag lines, the deep blue sea, a portrait of my mom and me. No longer blank, it's my creation. I am feeling such elation. What a glorious time I've had. I've been scared, silly, mad, and glad. I'm energized from head to toe, even when it's time to go. The museum's closed for the night, but I know that it's all right. Its rhythm exists in all I see. The museum lives inside of me.
That was great. Oh, I made myself very large there. Okay, let's go back to here. And here we go. Let's move to the next. So it's important to embrace the emotions that works of art make you feel. It can help us better understand what we like or don't like. Even if we don't like something, it's important to still take the time to look closely and ask questions. There might be something new that we notice or learn about the artwork, or even about ourselves. Before we go back to the Met, let's take a look at this painting. I'm going to tell you 3 things I know about it, and then we're going to take some time to explore. The first thing I know is that this is a painting by the artist Pieter Bruegel the Elder. He's from the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is a country in Northern Europe. Now for the questions. You can follow along with me, or you can take this time to pause the video, look closely, and ask these questions with your classmate or grown-up. First, I'm going to ask what I see or what I notice. What's happening? What do I see that makes me say that? Then I'm going to think, what does it remind me of? And then I'm going to wonder, what smells would I smell? What might it taste like? What's the temperature? What might they be talking about? So I'm going to look at this and ask myself those questions. I see what looks like a country landscape. Looks like they're near a sea or a lake. And it looks like there's a bunch of people here in the front, and they've picked some sort of a crop, and some of them are resting, and some of them are still working. It looks like it might be fall, and the reason I say that is because usually it's in the fall when people start harvesting all the grain, because it takes all summer to grow all of that. I also think that this is wheat, because that's just something that I've seen before, because I live in Idaho and there's lots of wheat fields, and I've seen similar things to this. I also see that the people are relaxing and some are eating. I wonder what that food must taste like. I wonder if the bread from back then, because it looks like it was a long time ago, tastes the same as the bread does now. And I wonder what it smells like out there. I wonder if you can smell some of the things from the farms over here. Or if you can hear the birds chirping. And I bet it's pretty hot. I'm going to say these people are harvesting in the fall. Oh my goodness, there's so many things to wonder about. You know, sometimes when we walk through galleries at a museum, we walk by the art very quickly. But sometimes we stop and take our time to look more closely at the paintings that might catch our eyes. Well, now that we've looked closely at this painting, we might better appreciate it when we walk by it in the galleries on our visit. Now let's go back to the Met and see what else we can learn. Whoops, here we go. I'm going to click here. And, well, there's that painting right there. Let's see, it's by Pieter Bruegel the Elder. Oil on wood. I wouldn't have expected that. It was made in 1565. You know, that's not that much different from, remember last week when we looked at the armor and it was made in the 1500s too? So maybe these people were harvesting at the same time that King Henry VIII was wearing that armor. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, it was in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is in Northern Europe. It's in a different area, but very close by to England. You can find it in the European paintings. Oh, but it's not in the galleries right now. That's too bad. But good for us that we have this great resource that we get to see it anyway. Well, here's a fun fact. Nicholas Jongelink probably, the man who requested or commissioned this work, was a big Pieter Bruegel fan. At one point, he owned 16 paintings by the artist. Wow. That must be, he must have painted even more than 16 paintings. How many paintings have you painted? Oh, this is cute. Met Kids animation inspired by Autumn and the artwork of Pieter Bruegel the Elder. Oh, that's a pretty cool idea. Let's watch that after we read this Discover information. This painting was one of 6, representing several times of the year in the countryside. Most artists in the 1500s painted religious subjects, so Pieter Bruegel's decision to paint ordinary people in a landscape was very unusual. There are many characters in this late summer scene, and they are shown in several different states, working, eating, sleeping, talking, and perhaps even looking at us. The connection between the people and nature seems very strong, whether they are working in nature or momentarily enjoying it. Yeah, that's one of the things I like most about Pieter Bruegel. I love it when artists are able to show the world around them in new and exciting ways for us to experience. Here they ask us to draw or paint the missing scene in the style of Pieter Bruegel the Elder. That seems kind of cool. Let's see what these kids did with their response to the harvesters.
Oh, I'm so hungry. I'm so tired. Can't we take a rest sometime? This food is so boring. Can we do anything besides harvesting wheat? Hello? Who are these people? We're just here to help. We brought you some things to make your life better. There's a hot dog. How about some french fries, too? Do these sunglasses fit? You might want some sunscreen. Here's some ketchup to go with your hamburger. There's some balloons for fun. We have to go back to our home now. Aww.
That was really creative of those girls. How fun. I wonder what you could make. Before we move on to our next piece of art, I want us to watch one more video. Gosh, I'm making you guys watch a lot of videos, but there's such great resources out there to help us out here. So we're going to go back here, and I'm going to share this video with you. So before we start our next little spot, I want us to question this, watch this, and then afterwards, we can chat with our grown-ups or with each other about what we learned.
Art. When we hear that word, some of our minds jump to museums or framed paintings. And in that context, some people think, nah, I'm not a big fan of art. I just don't get it. Or they think of art as something that's just for intellectuals or artsy people. But really, art is for anyone who wants to experience it. And it's often in more places than we might realize. Songs you like, movies you watch, poems, theater, even a quilt that your grandmother made. All of that and more is art. So you might be wondering, well, then what is art? How do I define it? Well, that's tough. Art's been around for thousands of years, and through the ages, it's evolved in a number of different ways. And the reasons for creating it vary from person to person depending on any number of factors. So, defining art is pretty tricky, and it's something that's been debated throughout history. There just isn't one agreed upon definition. However, many believe that art is anything that stirs emotion in you. Now, the emotions that get stirred up depend entirely on your own history, your story, everything that comes together to make up who you are. And because of this, three different people can experience the same piece of art and have wildly different reactions to it. One person might think it's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen, the second person might hate it, and the third might not feel much of anything at all. And none of them would be wrong. Everyone's entitled to their own preferences and feelings when it comes to art. You know, the way you feel about your favorite song could be the same way that someone else feels about their favorite sculpture. And even though you might not like that sculpture, it can be valuable to consider why that person enjoys it so much. You may learn something about them and maybe even yourself. The term art is really just a label. Over the years, a lot of people have tried to classify what it is or what it isn't, but that's not really what art is about. It's about your personal experience with it and the meaning that you draw from it. Everyone reacts to art differently and has the potential to grow and learn from it. It gives us the opportunity to tell stories, record history, and tap into our emotions in a way that few other things can.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Well, that was interesting. This is a good time to pause and either turn to a neighbor or talk with your grown-up or think to yourself, do you agree with the video that art is about your personal experience with it and the meaning you get from that experience? Why or why not? You know, my dad is an artist, and I remember always asking him this question. And we have lots of different conversations about it. But one of the things that I've pulled from those conversations is that art is all about your personal experience with it and the meaning that you get from that experience. But art is also a craft. And the people who create the art have worked long and hard to make that art happen. There are lots of really important pieces and elements that create good art and bad art. There are lots of things that artists think of as they're painting. They have different tools and different layers that they add to the art. They create different shapes and they put them in special orders that help our eyes look at the paintings and follow the stories that the paintings are telling. So while it's really important for us as appreciators of art, of people going to a museum and looking at art, to be aware of our feelings and how the art is affecting us and what we take away from that, it's also really important to admit and notice and celebrate all of the work and talent that has been placed into the creation of these different pieces of art. Not everybody can do this, and that's okay. We always need appreciators, but we always need artists. So I'm looking forward to hearing someday, maybe you could email me after this, why you agree with this statement, why not, and what you think about this. So before we go on, so our next little spot is someone who has created a piece of art very different from the harvesters. We are going to go to here. So let's explore some art that is very different from the harvesters. It's in the modern and contemporary art wing. So we're going to click through here. I am so excited to share this one with you. Autumn Rhythm. Now, this one looks like it's taken place in about the same time of year as the harvesters, but it looks very, very different. Here's a fun fact. At first, many critics and fellow artists ridiculed Jackson Pollock's drip and splash art. Time magazine even nicknamed him Jack the Dripper. People can be so mean sometimes. Let's take a minute to look at this art. It's very different from the harvesters. It's hard to ask those questions that we were asking before, isn't it? Let's read a little bit more. This is made of enamel on canvas. It was made in 1950, a long time after Pieter Bruegel the Elder created his harvesters. Jackson Pollock lived in North America, the United States. And we can find this in Gallery 919 in the Modern and Contemporary Art area. It looks like we can watch, listen, discover, imagine, and create. Before we watch this awesome video, let's look a little bit more at how we can discover. Especially because this is such a different piece of art. When we were looking at the harvesters, it was easy to find a story. It was maybe a little bit easier to find a way of connecting it with your own experience or finding things that it reminded you of. Let's look at the different colors and types of lines used in this painting. To control the lines, Jackson Pollock held his brushes far above the canvas and hardly ever let them touch the surface. He was called an abstract expressionist, an artist who based his works on improvisation, color, and/or the movement of the body to express emotions instead of painting recognizable figures and objects. Does this painting bring up the idea of autumn to you? Or suggest the feelings of autumn as the title suggests? I like the word rhythm in the title. So for me, I kind of see a little bit of a rhythm. How about you? Did you know this painting is 17 feet long? That's as long as my living room. Jackson Pollock worked on the canvas on the floor, standing over it and moving around the edges, dripping his paint. What might that have felt like? How would you move to get paint to the middle of the canvas? I wonder what he did. I like this create. If you're right-handed, try holding a pencil in your left hand as you make a drawing, or vice versa. Vice versa means or the other way around. If you're left-handed, try drawing with your right hand. See how it makes as you move your arm differently and create surprises. Or try this. Attach a crayon to the end of a long stick with a rubber band. Wrap it around a bunch of times and draw with it. See what happens. Now I think it's time for us to listen to this. Can artists break the rules?
Hi, I'm Charlotte and I'm 11 years old. I'm here interviewing Ian, a curator here at the Met.
Hi, I'm Ian Altavere. I'm an associate curator here in the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Met.
We're here in front of Jackson Pollock's Autumn Rhythm number 30.
I heard that this is your favorite painting in the museum. Is that right?
Yeah. I like that I get to decide what it is to me. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be something sad or something really happy. I think he painted it on the ground.
Yeah, he totally painted it on the ground.
It's really cool.
Jackson Pollock would take huge pieces of canvas. This is one of the largest he made. And he would put it on the floor of his little barn. And he would take cans of house paint, like what he would use to paint the side of a building. And he would take sticks or twigs or whatever he could get. And he would dip it into the can. And then he would slowly, very carefully, drip onto the surface.
He didn't touch the brush on the canvas the entire time.
That's right. But there are things like cigarette butts and other pieces of garbage that ended up on the painting. That's what happens when you paint on the floor, right? It collects all of this kind of history of what's happening when the artist is making the work.
I see white, black, tan, and teal. And then I see a lighter tan than the paint is the canvas.
He would lay down first a layer of black, and that kind of skeleton structure holds the picture together. And then he would add on top of that these other layers of other colors.
A lot of people stand in front of this painting and say, this looks so easy, I could do this. But it isn't actually that easy. It's very precise. sort of. It's just letting out his feelings in painting. I like to draw a lot, and sometimes I put my emotions into the things I draw.
When I look at this painting, one of the first things that comes to mind is all of this paint. But all of this paint super carefully laid down in a kind of wild but beautiful mess.
This is Charlotte reporting from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. When I look at this painting, I just think that it's really...
Gosh, I love these videos, don't you? So we're going to go back over here and we're going to pause for a minute. I've tried to recreate the painting here. I put a picture back here. It's not as beautiful as the image that you see as we would be walking through the Metropolitan Museum. It's definitely not 17 feet across, but it does have some detail that we can look at. And I'd like you to talk with yourself or to a friend or with a grown-up. And when you're looking at this painting, try talking about these questions. What's happening? What do you see that makes you say that? And what else do you see or think or wonder? And then when you're done, which painting did you like best? The Harvesters or Autumn Rhythm? And why? Here's my challenge for you this week. Go to your local art museum. Pick a painting. Take your time looking closely. One of the most important things about going to the museum is really making sure you take your time and look closely. And then ask yourself, or your grown-ups, these 3 questions. What do I see? What does this remind me of? And what does this make me wonder? P.S. Both of our paintings today were set in autumn. What are some words that you would use to describe autumn? How would you show those in a painting? Would you draw a painting that looked like things that you could see that would be representational, more like the Harvesters? Or would you like to draw your feelings in more abstract ways, the way that Jackson Pollock would paint? Why don't you try your own artistic interpretation of autumn? Thank you for joining me on today's tour of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Next week, we'll learn even more questions to help us learn about history and culture using the collection of objects at the Met. Thanks again, and I can't wait to see you next Monday at the museum. Bye.